Hi, I'm Amanda from Dixie Delights, and this is my first segment of a series of video blogs that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. I wanted to take the opportunity to show you how I arrange flowers and give you some tips and tricks from someone that's just an average girl and not at all an expert. First things first, I love to find my flowers at Trader Joe's, Fresh Market, and Whole Foods. I find that they have a great variety and they're pretty inexpensive overall. So for these flowers today, I found all of them at Trader Joe's. I generally, because I'm not an expert, kind of like to stick with one color. So while I might mix a few different things, I tend to either do all pinkish, all red, and in this case, all white. I love all white in my house because I can move it from room to room. So I bought these today to put in the powder room because I'm finally going to work on taking pictures of that for the blog. And using all white, I can then move them to any room in the house and they'll still go. So for example, we're having friends over for dinner Saturday night, and these will make a beautiful arrangement on the table. Generally, when I'm shopping for flowers, I buy 3 different things. Do you hear Elsa? I like to start with something that's kind of a focal point. And in this case, I picked hydrangeas. They're nice and big and in season, and they'll take up quite a bit of room in my container. The next thing I like to look for is some sort of an accent flower. So I generally pick something that's kind of long and then has a smaller flower on it. I have no idea what these are, but they smell delightful and they were only $3 and I can't wait to use them. The hydrangeas, by the way, were $6. The other thing that I buy for almost every single arrangement that I make, and this is just a partial bunch of it, is the eucalyptus greenery from Trader Joe's. It is also $3 and they always have it in stock, and I can usually get about 2 arrangements out of one bunch of this, which is why I have some of this left over. Funny enough, don't really like eucalyptus, so I pulled that part out and threw it away. Sometimes I'll use it in the fall, but I kind of feel like for the summer it has a really strong smell and I don't know, I just don't like it. So moving on to the container. I have a bunch of small vases that I use throughout the house, and I'm sure you've seen them on the blog. So I have a small one I usually have on my kitchen table, a small one on my coffee table in the den, and then this one is usually in my powder room. I found this one at IKEA. I think it was $2. It comes in white and this really nice grayish color. The one thing about this one is it does kind of have a wide opening, which I find to be a little bit harder when you're making an arrangement, just because you have to have more flowers to fill it up, which is another reason why I went with the hydrangeas. My other vases usually have smaller openings, and I find that for someone who is a novice like me, they're a little bit easier to make it look good. So the first thing you want to do is fill your container with water. And then I always use the little flower food packets that come with my flower bunches, because you'll get one in every bunch. I'll use the first one today, and then I change out the water in my arrangements I can't say every day, probably every other day or every 3rd day, and then I'll just use the extra flower packets when I change the water. So I have all of my flowers cut out from the plastic, and I always start with the one that I'm using as my feature flower. To make the first cut, I usually just eyeball how tall it should be. So I'll hold my container up and then hold the flower up next to it and pinch at the bottom where I'm going to make my first cut. I find that the most common mistake that people make when arranging flowers that don't know what they're doing, like me, is that they have them too tall for their container. So you want to look at how tall your container is and then try to keep in proportion how big the flowers should be relative to the size of the container. So I'm going to cut this one, and I just use regular old scissors, and then put it in and eyeball. I think that actually is a great height for this. So I just use the first one that I cut as a marker for the rest of them. If I'm working with something like roses or that has a lot of stems, I will usually do, say there's a dozen roses, 6 of them at one length and then the other 6 slightly longer, just so you can arrange them to where it has a little bit of difference in the height of the flowers in your container. The other thing that I always do, because I think that the leaves get a little bit yucky when they're stuck down in the water, is pull off or cut off any of the leaves in the bottom, say 3/4 of the stem. So this is where we are now. 3 hydrangeas in my container. And it's time to fill it in. I have 5 stems of this. Again, I have no idea what it is. And I'll go through the same method as I did before. Now I like for these to poke out a little taller and look a little bit flowy and wild. I don't like things like a sphere or a cone looking in here. So I'll hold it up to where it'll poke out a little, and then I pinch it with my finger and cut. Again, just like on the hydrangeas, I pull off any leaves on the bottom, and then I use this one as my go-by for the rest of the stems in the bunch. You can see it moves pretty quickly. You don't have to spend a lot of time on getting a really nice looking arrangement. The next thing you want to do is start putting them in. I try to distribute them evenly in my container. So I'll put one between each. Okay, now see, this one is too tall, so just cut a little more off. And keep in mind that you can always make it shorter, but you can't make it longer. So start with a shorter, start with it longer, and then let it, trim more off as needed. Looks like all of these I cut just a little bit too long. I also like to lift up the hydrangeas and then tuck these underneath and kind of spread the blooms out a little. And you want to turn it around because this arrangement is for my powder room. It is going to be in front of a mirror, and therefore I do want it to look pretty from all sides. And you just kind of work with it a little, get down on the level that it is, turn it around, take it in from all the different views. Okay. So the last thing that you want to add is the greenery. And again, I had these pieces left over from another arrangement the other day. I had just saved them in a cup. And I followed the same method that I did with the others. Trim and then tuck it in. I don't necessarily keep it uniform. I think it looks more natural to have different lengths and heights. I also usually keep the greenery. Okay, so if you have a long piece like this, you can cut it and then pull the leaves off where you cut, and then you have a shorter piece. Then you can use the other half of what you cut and put that in as well. And I think it's ready to go. So there you have it. In just a few minutes, a beautiful, very easy, inexpensive, this was $12 total, arrangement. I hope that you found this useful and helpful and that you'll join me again next time. Have a delightful day.